Okay.
How are you? You're fabulous at that, but it's super easy too.
Okay, guys, we're just going to do a quick audio check. Anybody who is online, if we can just make sure that we are getting audio from you.
This is John Byram. Can you hear me?
Thank you.
Let's go from Texas State University. Just doing a mic check.
I got a file into this. Ready?
Good morning.
Yeah, like.
You do come across that. I am an introvert.
Yeah, this is Ted Boriak doing a mic check.
We hear you, Ted.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, mic check.
Morning, Paul.
This is Mike Short checking his mic.
Gotcha, Mike.
Yes, sir. All right, I got 1 minute till, but Kai, if you could go ahead and start the roll call.
Yes, sir.
Francis, mic check.
You got it, Francis.
Tim Andrus. Ryan Bale. John Byram.
Here.
Kurt Campbell.
Here.
Andra Wision. Present. Debbie Farmer. Marissa Bruno for Charlie Flatten. Here. Metzler.
Here.
Terrell Graham. Vic Hildebrand.
Give us just 1 minute.
Tom Youngman. Aaron T. Present. Jason Ammerman.
Here.
Scooter Mangold.
Here.
Andrew McBride.
Here.
Daniel Meyer. Gary Middleton.
Hi, this is Dwayne Crocker. I'm here on behalf of Gary, who was unavailable this morning.
Thanks, Wayne. Travis Pruski.
Present.
Robert Puente.
Here.
Vanessa Puig Williams. Humberto Ramos.
Here.
Weldon Riggs.
Here.
Roland Ruiz.
Here.
Daryl Brownlow.
Here.
Darren Simmons. Mitchell Sowards.
This is Ryan Smith here for Mitch Sowers.
Thanks, Brian. Jonathan Stinson.
Here.
Paul Kite.
Here.
Ryan Kelso.
Mike Short on behalf of Ryan Kelso here.
Thanks, Mike. Diane Wasenick.
I'm here.
Adam Yablonsky.
I'm here.
Dan Yoxel. Harley Rotzler. Tony Franklin.
I'm here. Good morning.
Tom Hegemeyer. Ileana Delgado. Don McGee. Michelle Foss. Charles Wiedenfeld. Jamie McCool. Carl Kroll. We have the form.
All right, thank you, Kai. And before we do public comment, if anybody needs a public comment form, Kai has them here if you didn't get a chance to pick one up outside. But that brings us to our Item number 2, public comment. Anybody have any public comment this time? All right, sensing none. Move on to item number 3, approval of minutes from the previous meeting, the South Central Texas Regional Water Planning Group. Do I have any discussion on the minutes or motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay. Motion and seconds. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor of approving the motion, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed. Minutes are approved. All right. Phil, I think that brings us to you. Status report, communications from the Texas Water Development Board.
Good morning, everybody. A few things from the board. First item is every 5 years, the board is tasked with taking comments and reviewing the boundaries used for the regional water planning areas every 5 years, essentially to coincide with the planning cycles. We had an open public comment period earlier this summer that ended on June 30th. That comment period, of course, is now closed. We anticipate taking our recommendations to the board for no changes to the planning area in October. Next slide. We had a Regional Water Planning Group Chairs call on July 28th. Due to the nature of the call, the technical consultants and political sponsors were also invited to that call. The main topic was presentation of the socioeconomic impact analysis for the 2026 regional water plans that the board prepared for each regional water planning group. Our notes and a recording of that meeting and the presentation are available on our website at the link on the slide. I will be going into the socioeconomic impact analysis briefly for you in just a few minutes. At the chair's call, we also had a review of important deadlines and other matters. The board has distributed contract amendments for the remaining committed funds for this regional water planning cycle. We expect those funds to drop on Monday for everyone. And we are currently developing the schedule for the 2031 regional water plans. We expect that schedule to be issued later on this fall, probably October timeline. Some important deadlines and reminders for everybody. Of course, our deadline for the groups to submit their plans is October 20th, close of business. Data entry and data revision deadlines are September 22nd. We still have a lot of planning groups, including Region L, that are working on some last minute data revisions in DB27, which is what hosts all of the fantastic reports that power the interactive state water plan that is on our website. So deadline is September 22nd for getting all those changes in so that reports will be available, final reports will be available for planning groups that are including hard copies of those reports as part of their plan. Those will be available on September 24th. And regions need to provide their the Water Development Board comments that were sent out to the planning groups in June. We need to see all of the responses and the revised materials before you can post for your plan adoption meeting. so that we can verify that everything has been taken care of and that you have an approvable plan that gets submitted. It's at the Regional Water Planning Group's discretion to address comments that were submitted outside of the formal IPP comment period. The planning group meeting where you're going to adopt your final plan for Region L here, that's going to be October the 2nd. So that meeting will require a 14-day advance notice agenda posting and public comment period, and minimum 7-day posting for all of the materials, including the proposed final plan. All right, next slide. So for the socioeconomic impact analysis, beginning with, I believe, the last planning cycle, it used to be regional water planning groups did this exercise on their own. They often had a sub-consultant perform this for them. While that was good, it was really, really difficult to compare apples to apples between the regions. So the board decided beginning last cycle that we would have our in-house PhD economist perform this service for the regional water planning groups. As part of the planning process, planning groups must evaluate the social and economic impacts of not meeting your water needs. And that's due to statute. And the socioeconomic impact analysis report was distributed to the groups June 26th. We distributed an addendum last week with some due to some comments and notations about perhaps either some over or under conservatism with regards to manufacturing water use. We apparently noticed some skewed data for what got submitted during the 2020 and 2021 and 2022 COVID years. And we didn't have time to root around that much to be able to confirm or deny and rerun the socioeconomic impact analyses for all the regions before they needed to get incorporated in the plans. So there are some notations for y'all there. And we do have an actual web page that includes a dashboard. I've got a slide that shows you what it looks like towards the end of the presentation. If you want to dive deep into the methodology, that information is there, and the frequently asked questions document is also there. I'm not an economist, but I will do my best to give you a good summary of what you can expect out of this and the final numbers. For the socioeconomic impact analysis, our economist uses the in-plan impact planning model. This is considered the state-of-the-art model used for determining economic impact analysis for various factors and situations. It's an input-output software, and this takes a look at regional impacts due to changes in production in 546 different economic sectors. And we use it for lost income, taxes, and at-risk jobs for each region due to water shortages. And as noted at the top and the bottom, the model year is 2021 because we look at costs for September 2023. There is an additional calculation that was done to modify the 2021 dollar output the M-Plan generates to the 2023 dollars that you see for costs for strategy projects in the plan. So we can get a better look. All right, next slide. So there should be a graph that shows up there. For determining the lost income, we take a look at the adjusted water value in acre feet by the acre feet of needs. So we're looking at value-added water, water use data, and the initial value-added acre feet. And with that information, we put it into M-Plan, and it adjusts for the number of firms or entities in the region, looks at impact elasticity, adjusted water value, acre feet of needs, and generates lost income for the sector. And that results in, next slide, it results in impact analyses that vary by degree of shortage, vary by the composition of water, whether it's fresh or brackish, and economic activity by county. And we've got region-specific multipliers to reflect the impact on the region. So the most important data that goes into, next slide. The most important data that goes into the M-Plan model is the baseline structure of the economy that we're looking at and the projected water needs. And then we also take a look at the population municipal water demand projections, the impact methodology, and inflation. 2 slides forward. The report contents, there's an executive summary. There's a description of impact measures, a brief description of the methodology, the impact measurement results by water use sector, and then we've got an appendix that has the county level results by WUG. So next slide. So the production sectors for Region L, this is not all of them, but essentially this is the top 10. As you might imagine, there is a lot of manufacturing, a lot of mining, quarrying, oil and gas extraction, healthcare, and a lot of service industries. The Region L water use estimates, municipal, of course, is the highest, irrigation is the second highest, manufacturing and mining, and then livestock and steam electric power. So what everybody is waiting for, the results. Next slide. For irrigation, as you might expect, there are some needs. And the impact is on the order of, let's see, that is in millions. So around 35, 36 million per decade. Pretty steady. And hovering around 1,000 at-risk job losses, in addition to the direct impacts for ag. Yes?
I have a question.
Yes.
On this table 1.2,
Mhm.
1-2, noting, actually, table 4.1, the impact of water shortages on irrigation.
Mhm.
And you indicate job loss.
Yes.
Every year since 2001, the original water plan, we've shown pretty dramatic water shortages in irrigation. Looking at this, do we track back and look at how many jobs were lost in the last 30 years in irrigation?
No. This is an analysis of a critical water shortage over a 1-year period.
Okay, but we haven't seen,
It's not
and we've not documented, we
cumulative.
have no real evidence of job losses in the last 30 years.
No, we do not. Okay, next slide, manufacturing. Manufacturing definitely takes a much harder hit here. We are taking a look at losses anywhere from just over 9 billion to potentially over 12 billion in the 2080 decade. At-risk job losses anywhere from about 74,000 to 96,500 due to not meeting needs for 1 year. Next, municipal. Income losses range, next slide. Income losses range from 319 million in 2030 to about 2.8 billion in 2080. With at-risk job losses ranging from about 4,200 to over 36,000. So the limitations, as I mentioned, it focuses on sectors where we have adequate water use data. If we don't have data, the model can't work with it. This is consideration of only 1 year of drought. If we have some situations like we have actually seen recently where we have multiple years of drought continuously, the impacts could be considerably greater. The model only works backwards for impacts. It doesn't work forwards for impacts. So a good example is for the agriculture sector, when you have a drought, you don't have adequate grazing land and or hay for cattle, and ranchers have to sell off their cattle. Beef prices go up, and that hits the consumer. And so it doesn't take a look at impacts to the, beef processing, transport of beef to grocery stores, impacts to the consumer for, additional money spent for groceries, that sort of thing. So it is somewhat limited there. It doesn't consider impacts to other planning regions. So it takes a look at your planning region in a bubble. It doesn't consider any other strategies intervening, like building moratoriums or other items for intervention, shall we say, for dealing with the water shortage. It doesn't account for increased value of water over time. Okay, last slide. So this is take a quick look at what the dashboard looks like on our website. There's an interactive data section. The impact reports are there. You can pull previous reports. There's a frequently asked questions tab and a contact tab. But I believe a copy of the socioeconomic impact report is included in your packet. If you have questions, you can let me know, or you can take a look. We've got the contact information for our projections and socioeconomic analysis team up there. And Dr. Ellis will be glad to walk you through things. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you for that report. I'm just curious, I'm looking at previous reports and these were done in 21, 16, and so on. Did you change the methodology or any of the data that was collected?
I don't believe that we did significantly.
And then a follow-up question, the previous reports didn't have that forward linked impact as well?
No.
Okay.
No. Let's see, for the impact methodology, there were minor revisions for manufacturing, mining, and the irrigation impact procedures, but I don't know specifically what those were. Dr. Ellis could tell you what those were.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Just a trivial question back on table 1-2. Notice there in 2030, water needs acre feet 71,258. So in 2040, y'all predicting a wet year, wet decade, water went down.
That is because we anticipated that there were going to be some adoptions for irrigation. That's for the irrigation. So we were anticipating to see efficiencies due to agricultural irrigation upgrades for additional water conservation in that decade. And then expecting for irrigation to continue along about the same path after that.
Yeah.
Third question?
Yeah, this is Ted Boriak. I'm a landowner out of Gonzales County, and at some point I'd like to be able to ask some questions. Not sure how I can get in here though. Is it okay if I ask some questions about this right now?
Do you represent somebody, or is he just a public?
In public.
We'll have a public comment period again at the end of the day. As the last item, so I'd ask you to kind of hold your comment till then, and I'll open it back up for public comment at that time.
Okay, and I'm going to be limited. Am I going to be limited to 3 minutes?
If you want to ask questions, that would be a separate situation. So public comment would be, you just provide your public comment. Yes, you're limited to 3 minutes and you wouldn't be necessarily provided responses. But if you have specific questions on this presentation, I know you have my contact and I'm happy to connect you with Michelle as well after this.
Okay. Yeah, I would like, I have a lot of questions about this. There's no way I can cover it in 3 minutes. So however I can get these questions answered.
What would be the best way is to contact Kai and then get with Michelle and get those questions, and maybe Michelle can answer.
Ted, if you have specific questions about the model, the inputs and the outputs, I would contact Dr. Ellis, and on the last slide, it's the EDA at twdb.texas.gov email.
Okay.
You see that?
Yeah, I do.
Dr. Ellis was the one that did all the modeling. So he can give you all of the nitty gritty details that you do or do not want about the model.
Okay, yeah, I just a real a quick basic comment is that this socioeconomic model doesn't begin to cover the damage in terms of economic devastation that is happening due to the farms and ranches from excessive pumping by exporters. It's not even close.
Thank you, Ted.
All right.
Anything else, Michelle? Are you done?
Nothing else for me unless anyone has any questions.
I've got a comment. With
Yes.
regards to each region does this, right? And then
Yes.
it's enrolled into the state plan. So
Yes.
as we progress with these state plans, have you seen any positive feedback or just it's gonna cost us money, it's gonna this, and we need water supplies? No one's at a positive, pretty much the state is at a deficit, correct? I mean.
It's pretty much the entire state is seeing a deficit.
Anything that's happening here is happening in other regions with regards to irrigation, with regards to jobs lost, with regards to everything.
Yeah, the great in-migration to the great state of Texas has not stopped. And so it is definitely putting a lot of stresses on everything. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Takes us to item number 5, status reports. So regional liaisons, the status report from our other regions. The GMA representatives or other members of the planning group have an update from the GMA?
I can provide an update on GMA 13. We had a meeting last week, August 15th in Pleasanton, or as they say in Pleasanton. I know people, sorry, well, Pleasanton.
I live in Black Hill.
I like Pleasanton. Kelly Cochran, the general manager for the Guadalupe County district, had prepped a meeting minutes. It was a long meeting. It was very instructive, but very important information was disclosed. And I'll give you some of the highlights. There was an update from the Water Development Board by Robert Bradley regarding the Groundwater Conservation District Grant Program, where there's $7 million of appropriated funds over the next 2 years for groundwater conservation district research, modeling, things like that. They're in the process of trying to develop the administrative aspects of the implementation of that program. I think if I recall, it was probably in the next 6 to 9 months, they will have a process whereby they can take applications from groundwater districts to do a variety of research, modeling, implementation of monitoring wells, things like that. There was an update from, or not an update, but a presentation by Dr. Justin Thompson of the BEG, Bureau of Economic Geology. He talked about what the BEG is doing and explained that they now have a push towards research opportunities to obtain more information for planning processes, developing consortiums. So basically, to summarize, if GCDs or any entities want to get together, create a consortium, put money into it, the BEG is prepared to leverage their research abilities to help groundwater districts and other entities. Something they haven't pushed, really have not been a focus on, but they want to move in that direction. So it was a good presentation. There was another interesting presentation by Dr. Bill Hutchison, who is contracted by the GMA 13 to do the groundwater modeling, but he was asked to report on, give his assessment of the Maverick Basin aquifer, or the Maverick aquifer. Some of you may recall a few years ago, there was a press story about oil companies identifying a huge new surplus of fresh groundwater in Maverick County. That was several thousand feet deep that nobody was aware of. And so it garnered quite a bit of attention in some circles as possibly a new aquifer, a new source of water for the region. Dr. Hutchison was asked to do an assessment of the Maverick Aquifer. And again, we're talking along the border near Eagle Pass in that region of the state. Dr. Hutchison's assessment was, well, it's 3,000 or 4,000 feet deep. It's might be fresh water, but it's got a lot of oil in it. And there's some other things associated with it that would make it very difficult for development. He didn't feel like it merited its own designation as an aquifer, and therefore the GMA 13 and the planning group probably shouldn't create desired future conditions or modeled available groundwater for this Maverick aquifer. Probably the most important thing we discussed, I think it's important for this region to understand what was happening with these GMAs. But Dr. Hutchison talked about this House Bill 2078 that just passed and amendments to Chapter 36. And I'll read this because I think it's very important for us to recognize a couple things here. A review of the DFCs, he's evaluating this from the standpoint of reviewing the DFCs based on GAM simulations and a comparison analysis using Winter Garden Groundwater Conservation District data. Reviewing what he's doing is looking at the groundwater data and how it compares to the current groundwater availability models. And the passing of HB 2078 requires additional work. And, oh, that's the wrong one. Dr. Hutchison reviewed and simulated actual drawdowns showing flaws of the previous model. So he's looking at drawdown models and actual data within GMA 13 to see how it compares with the model predictions. He reviewed the MAG, the Managed Available Groundwater history, using Gonzales County as an example. And I think here's the meat of what I'm trying to disclose. Dr. Hutchison discussed a previous round pre-permitting approach to reserve water from projects in regional and state plans, and that instead we should shift toward using aquifer conditions and capabilities in this round. The significance of that is basically saying the GMA process, the managed available process, the GMP process has historically looked at increasing the MAG, the managed available groundwater, and water usage based upon project inputs from developers to add to the reserve as to the amount of water that's being produced. That results in an increased managed available groundwater with consequent DFCs and all of the things that the groundwater districts have to abide by and the regional planning group has to use. His point is that rather than having developers dictate what the amount of water that should be used in the reserve for the managed available groundwater, that instead we should focus on the aquifer conditions and the capacity and capability of that aquifer rather than putting the horse before the cart. It was a significant discussion because it shows the interaction between the need of developers to have water allocated in aquifers versus what the groundwater districts need to manage in terms of availability and capacity of those aquifers and the consequent impacts on the desired future conditions. Nothing was decided. It was just for the first time we saw this discussion sort of in the open. And it affects not just GMA 13, but GMA 16, GMA 15, whereby the developers need the water the water's there in the aquifer. They want to have input into how much water is being modeled. So they want to insert their needs in there. And there's a role for that. But to have the discussion about, it seems like, I think Dr. Hutchison was making the point that historically it's been tilted toward give the developers of the water users what they need and then model it. And that becomes the DFC. And I think he was cautioning that has created some anxieties, obviously, with groundwater districts. I'm not making a judgment here because I think the water needs to be utilized, it needs to be managed appropriately, and everything needs to be put on the table. But for our consultant to be bringing that up to the GMA 13, I thought it was quite revealing as his sensitivity toward the pressure that is being applied to groundwater districts in GMA 13s to accommodate a certain amount of groundwater available for specific projects. And so it does create this conflict in some respect. So,
I'm sorry, would you repeat his name?
Dr. Bill Hutchinson.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and he gave a presentation on it, and it was you might follow up with GMA 13 and Kelly Cochran. And another presentation, I'm sorry for taking so much time, but this was really interesting, that the GMA 13, the model, the groundwater availability model, Dr. Hutchison, along with Dr. Green, who's working for the Winter Garden Groundwater District, they went into a deep dive on how well the groundwater availability model works for the Winter Garden District, which is LaSalle, Dimmitt, and Zavala County, a large agricultural and mining, frackwater mining area. And they demonstrated that the DFCs that were passed in the previous 2021, and in that model, the new model would indicate that based upon current water levels, they have surpassed their desired future conditions by a significant amount right now. Yeah, so what they're saying is that these DFCs are based on the water levels declines through 2080. Well, they've blown past those already. So it identifies challenges within these models. And I think it is significant. What it says is the model is screwed up. The inputs, the model, some of those technical aspects. So anyway, I've overdone my time.
Well,
I'll
just add a little bit because I'm the GMA 9 rep, and we have very similar discussions, and the GAM model discussion is continuing to go on because we don't expect to get our new GAM run for the Trinity anytime soon. Put out a draft. There's some issues with the draft model, but basically our option at this point is to hire a third-party consultant to put predictive modeling on top of the aquifer model, so that we can do any pumping runs for the next planning cycle. So we're already talking that we're going to end up having some issues where we may end up having to adopt a DFC. And there's a big struggle right now at the GMA what DFC to adopt right now, and then we may end up doing a modification to our DFC sometime in the middle of the next planning process. And when that hits, if it lines up with what the region's doing, we don't know.
Well, that's exactly right, and that's what I'm portraying here as well. Because, for example, the Evergreen Groundwater District, we are engaging in a serious $1 million plus modeling effort to create a very detailed model, predictive model for our use that dovetails into the GAM. But all of this stuff becomes legal fodder for applications for water withdrawal and expectations that these DFCs actually mean something, that the managed available groundwater means something, and that actually relates to direct pumping, and so it's a work in progress. But when you throw in some of these recent House bills by Chairman Harris regarding percentages of DFCs or percentages of MAG and some of these things, it makes it even more complex for that, because the validity, the foundational elements of those MAGs and those DFCs are very controversial. Even the groundwater districts they're substantially in question. Yet the groundwater districts are put in a position of having to approve permits and treat everybody as fair as they possibly can and have some reasonableness and not just say no because we think it's too much. We have to have the science behind it. So anyway, just my public comment.
Yeah, I definitely
saved it for the end.
I definitely feel like it's something that the region may need to be aware of. Probably something that's going to come up in the next plan. We're going to get varying DFC, things are going to change. I think we're going to end up with a lower MAG. Not going to be much because we could be over the DFCR.
Well, and to add one last thing is then you've got brackish water issues. Most managed available groundwater plans exclude brackish water, but brackish water is a very important part of the water picture and the water inventory. Well, how do you treat brackish water with respect to fresh water? And how do those rules apply? We have to utilize every resource that's available to this region and develop those water supplies. But how are you going to manage it? How do you decide permits? How do you adjust that? How does that fit into these managed available groundwater models? We exclude the Wilcox Aquifer in our modeling for the MAG. Yet that's a very important part of this regional water plan, incredibly important for GBRA, for the San Antonio water systems, for this region. We have to extract as much of that resource as we can. But right now, we've never needed to, so we need a lot of input. I think the groundwater districts need a lot of input to understand how to go forward on this.
Well, the last thing I'll say to that too is just that last week was the TAG D, Texas Irrigation Groundwater District meeting. I think we over at 2. It's clear to me the Water Development Board had an agenda there. And it struck me, it's interesting that we as a state spend the same amount of money on groundwater modeling today that we did in like 2001. That number has not changed. But we do a heck of a lot more than we did in 2001. The board does not have the funds to do what we're asking them to do. The take home that I think the board would want to tell us. It came up in like 8 different talks during the conference.
I think that's going to be a legislative ask.
Yeah, it's clear that that's coming. The legislative ask is coming. All right. So any other updates from any board members? All right. So let's move on to item number 6. Lauren, are you ready?
Yes, sir. Okay. Give me a moment as I figure out this new system. Sure. Okay. Excuse me. Okay. Thank you, Kurt. Good morning. It's lovely seeing you all today. We're going to start off with our usual agenda item of schedule progress and or schedule and progress updates on completed, new, or ongoing efforts. Starting off with the schedule progress. This is the conceptual schedule we've been seeing for the last few years. And we're in third quarter 2025. So you can see we are nearing the end of the 6th cycle of regional water planning. Zooming in to our anticipated schedule for this year, we are here where this yellow box is. And the last time we met was at the February 20th meeting. And this was the meeting in which you all considered and adopted the initially prepared plan, which we then submitted on March 3rd to the Texas Water Development Board. Then after that, there were 2 different meetings. Well, there was a public comment period in which the public had the opportunity to review and provide comments on the initially prepared plan. And during that period of time, we had 2 meetings to present the IPP to the public. One was the formal public hearing on May 21st, and the second was a virtual information session on July 2nd. So here today, at today's meeting, we're planning to provide an overview of the comments that we received on the IPP from the public, from the Texas Water Development Board, and from any other agencies other than the board. And then for your consideration, we'll be presenting proposed responses to those comments and providing any updates to the plan. And the next meeting is October 2nd. This is the meeting in which we will be presenting any follow-ups or updates to the plan that weren't presented today, that I guess occur after today or will become necessary after today. Any updates to those chapters, any updates to responses to comments. And then this is also the meeting in which you'll consider and adopt the final 2026 Region L Regional Water Plan. As you all may have noticed in Michelle's presentation, she mentioned the September 22nd deadline in which DB 27 closes. So DB 27 is the Texas Water Development Board's database in which we input all project data, existing supplies data, and that data must be included in DB 27. And the requirement is that the information in DB 27
And the plan report, that data is consistent and matches. And we'll get into a little bit of that later on in agenda item 8, I believe. So the October 2nd meeting, adopting the final plan, and then the final submittal is due October 20th. And that includes the final plan and also any final submittal documents, GIS files, models, things like that. So updates on completed, new, or ongoing efforts. So as I mentioned, we submitted the initially prepared plan on March 3rd. The Texas Water Development Board declared it to be administratively complete on March 5th. And we held those 2 meetings to present the IPP to the public, that public hearing and the virtual information session. And all meeting materials and recordings from those meetings are available online at regionltexas.org. And if I could pause for a moment and call out San Antonio River Authority, they have done an amazing job to revamp the website. It is very modern and easy to navigate and includes our new modernized logo. So thank you, San Antonio River Authority. It looks really good. Then we have received public and agency comments. We accepted them between March 3rd and July 20th. And we have prepared these proposed responses to those comments that we'll be presenting to you in the next agenda item. And as Michelle mentioned, there is this socioeconomic impact analysis report, and this is a QR code to the initial document. Also, as Michelle mentioned, they have published an addendum to this, and you can find that by Googling TWDB socioeconomic. I think that's it. What was?
I think in the final files that are on the board's website, the addenda page is actually the last page of the report.
Wonderful. Okay, even better. And we are updating Chapter 10, which Chapter 10 is the public outreach and interregional coordination. So we're continuing those efforts, updating Chapter 10 with information on the comment period and information on comments received and responses. And then we're continuing DB27 updates and revisions. So DB27, previously it was open for technical consultants to directly enter and revise data. At this point, because of so many interregional connections, DB27 is currently closed to for direct entry, but the Texas Water Development Board can make those changes if we request it. Sorry. And so we've been coordinating with them to make any edits to address the comments or update information to make sure, the information in DB27 and the plan report match. Are there any questions on that before I move to the next agenda item?
No, ma'am.
Is it okay to go?
Please proceed.
Thank you. Okay, agenda item 7, consideration and appropriate action to approve proposed responses regarding the public comments and agency comments received on the initially prepared plan. So this is the meaty section of our agenda items. And so we've broken it down into, various sections and subsections. So the first item I'll cover is updates to the plan that are sort of initiated by us as opposed to addressing comments. The path forward to responding to those comments and the timeline. The next one is providing a summary of comments received and the requirements by the board for us to respond to those comments. And then we'll present the Texas Water Development Board comments, and then we'll present agency and public comments. And the agency and public comments are broken out into those subcategories shown there. So topic A, plan updates and path forward. So there are some general updates that we're planning to make. As I mentioned, continuing DB27 updates and making any necessary revisions so that they're consistent. Updating the executive summary with this updated information to ensure consistency across chapters. Formatting and performing accessibility checks. We're going to compile and update tables of contents, appendices, and so forth. The basic things that you do with any report when you're making changes to it. In terms of chapter updates, we are making necessary revisions to maps, costs, correcting typos, those sorts of things. They're primarily non-substantive changes. And then chapter 6, we are updating it to include the TWDB socioeconomic impacts not meeting needs report, adding that as an appendix 6A to chapter 6. And we're updating the Bernie unmet needs to indicate that they are not planning to purchase from the Water Secure project to meet those shortages. And I'll get into that in a later agenda item. And then, of course, as I mentioned, chapter 10, we're updating it to include information on the IPP submittal, comments and responses. And then additional updates to the plan include any updates to address IPP comments, which we will be discussing in subsequent slides. And any changes that we haven't talked about here and haven't gotten authorization to make changes to here, we will provide any updates at the October 2nd meeting. So you guys will know exactly what has changed or been updated. So in terms of the path forward, March 3rd, far left, we submitted the IPP to the Texas Water Development Board. July 20th, the IPP comment period closed. And we are right here, right now, at this August 28th meeting where you'll consider and respond to those comments. And then September 22nd is the deadline where DB 27 closes and we cannot make changes after that. So that means that any changes that occur are very limited after September 22nd. And then the October 2nd meeting, that's when you'll adopt the final plan. And October 20th is when we'll submit the final adopted regional water plan. We have handouts in your agenda packet. Handout A includes a comment summary of it includes summaries of all the various comments, and then there are attachments within that handout for the verbatim comments that we received from the board, Texas Parks and Wildlife, from the public, from water user groups and wholesale water providers, just so that you can see them in their totality and consider them. What we're going to be presenting from here forward are predominantly summaries. Some of them are verbatim pasted into the presentation, but a lot of the lengthier comments are summarized to just summarize what their requests were or what their concerns were or comments. So the comment summary and response requirements. So we received a total of 64 written comments. And when we held the public hearing, we received 0 oral comments. Of those 64 written comments, 47 were from the Texas Water Development Board and 17 were from the public or other state or other agencies. For the Texas Water Development Board comments, we received 27 level 1 comments and 20 level 2 comments, and I'll get into the distinction between those in the next slide. Of the 17 public and other agency comments, we received 1 state agency comment from the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, 2 from water user groups or wholesale water providers, and 14 comments from the public or stakeholders. And so down at the bottom of this slide identifies the various handouts that we have for today so that you can see clearly where the comments are and where the proposed responses are. So in handout A, it's a summary of all the comments that we received, no responses. Handout B, those are the proposed responses to the Texas Water Development Board comments only. And that handout includes some to be determined comments because they hadn't been pre-approved by the Texas Water Development Board yet. And so we've handed out an addendum. It's a 3-page addendum that includes updates to those. So any of the ones that were included in handout B that said TBD, they're shown in this addendum, the proposed response, and that the Texas Water Development Board has now pre-approved all of our comments. So every one of those 47 TWDB comments, they pre-approved them and they will verify that they are complete and officially approved once they receive the final chapters. Did you have a question?
I see some confused faces on where handout A and handout B are. They're at the very back of that thick packet that you have.
And then, so proposed responses to the board are in handout B and the addendum to handout B. And then this presentation serves as the proposed responses to the public and other agency comments. So all of these proposed responses are, yes, sir.
See handout A.
It's at the very back. You'll see a white page that says handout A by itself, and then after that, there's just gonna be a bunch of comments and totality, and then at the end, you'll see handout B, same thing, designated by a page that says handout B, and it looks similar to this extra handout that she pointed out earlier.
I'll see it.
Page 35.
That's about halfway through.
Halfway through.
It's a big packet, so I understand. Obviously, y'all are, this is all the comments.
There it is. All right. It's not
That's the
far up at
addendum.
the end. It's further up.
Is this answering your question?
The beginning of the middle is where handout A is.
No, that's the addendum. That's the, what, 5 to 7 comments that were TBD. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, you found it. Wonderful. So handout A is in the agenda packet at the very back. Handout B is also in the agenda packet at the very back. And then the addendum to handout B is handed out separately. Okay, so then this presentation, it serves as the proposed responses to the public and other agency comments. And I just want to underscore that these are proposed. They're subject to your approval. They're subject to your revisions. So if you would like to revise anything, just speak up and before we officially approve it.
Would you say that again? Sorry.
Yes, sir. Or yes, ma'am. So sorry. Yes. So I just wanted to underscore that these proposed responses are just that. They're proposed. They're subject to your consideration and approval and revision. So if you would like to see any changes or go in a different direction, now's the time to give that feedback, so then we can approve them today and move forward. Yeah. So in terms of requirements for responding to comments, the board requires that regional water planning groups consider timely agency and public comments. The final adopted plan must include the following, and it's sort of broken out and there are kind of distinctions between those comments we received from the Texas Water Development Board versus other comments from other agencies other than the board and from the public. So when it comes to Texas Water Development Board comments, we must include a copy of the board's written comment letter in its entirety. And then we also must include responses to each comment explaining how the plan was revised or why changes were not warranted. And we get those pre-approved by the Texas Water Development Board, and we have gotten them all pre-approved as of yesterday, and that's what we're presenting to you all today. The board distinguishes between level 1 comments versus level 2. Level 1 comments are required to be sufficiently addressed in the final plan. And level 2 comments, they can be addressed, but they are not required to be addressed. And so we have included proposed responses to both of those categories of comments. And for the other category of comments from other agencies and the public, we must summarize the comment or the comments as a group if they are of the same general topic, and respond to the comment or comment grouping indicating any resulting revisions or why changes are not warranted. And the comments may be addressed, but no change is required. Are there any questions on this slide and the requirements for responding to comments?
Yeah, this is Ted Boriak. Do I have to cover that in the public comment section at the end, or can I ask a question? We submitted substantial comments that were not addressed.
Submitting comments that aren't in here?
All of his public comments are included in their entirety in handout A. And then we will go, in a later slide, we will be summarizing those comments that were received, and we'll have a proposed response to them.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
it's a general dismissal is what's happened.
So let's get to that point. We'll talk when we get to those comments.
Okay.
I just had a quick question on the caller, Mr. Boriak. Who is we? Whom do you represent?
Yeah, I'm with the Water Protection Association out of Gonzales County, and there's a lot of family farms and ranchers that are members. It's actually a pretty big group. I'm the vice president of the Water Protection Association, and there's a very large movement in Gonzales County now that they've realized what's happened, and that is massive over permitting and unrelenting exporter projects that keep coming in, and they keep coming. And what they do is they point to the region plan and they say, hey, we're in the plan, so you have to approve us. And then they bring in these big teams of lawyers, and the poor ranchers and farmers are the ones that then have to be the police force to say, hey, you guys got to stop, installing these massive export wells, which are draining the family farms and the ranches. And there is not enough mitigation money to fix what they're doing. But the damage is huge, and it really needs to stop. And so there are, I'm guessing maybe a dozen folks from Gonzales County, including myself, that submitted comments. And so we're looking for specific responses to those issues that we raised.
Thank you for answering my question. I just wanted to know to whom you represented. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to Texas Water Development Board comments. Sorry, go ahead, Kurt.
That's Ted. I appreciate y'all's concerns in Gonzales County, and we'll talk about things in Gonzales County as part of this plan. But some of the stuff you're saying is not necessarily the purview of this group. And so I'm sure while a lot of us will agree with you and understand the plight that is going on in Gonzales County, a lot of us in our own counties have very similar things. I'm sure some of the comments, and I haven't seen the responses yet, and you'll probably take them as a dismissal, but some of them I'm going to guess are probably not pertinent to what this group covers in the plan. And so we may be able to help you find the right avenue to have those discussions, but some of them may not be relevant today. And so we'll kind of work through those, and I'll take public comment at the end of the meeting, where we'll give more opportunity for general public comment. But we're gonna talk about it. I understand Gonzales County, familiar that it is a MAG limited county. There are projects in Gonzales County. They are all controlled by the MAG there, and I'm sure they're dealing with the same groundwater issues that we talked about earlier. GMAs are dealing with. So,
okay. Well, I appreciate your comment. I can tell you, I was at that last GMA meeting, and I've been to a lot of meetings. I've testified at the House and the Senate in Austin during the session. And this is what your response is typical of what I see, where, that's really not the problem of this particular group or a particular Water Development Board guy or a GMA planning group. And, but yet these projects keep coming. And even though
Mr. Boriak, real quick, like Kurt said, we have to get through the agenda item, and you're welcome to hear your comments at the public comment portion of it. And again, you have our contact information if you want to ask more questions, but we need to keep going through the agenda items.
I'm open cut off.
And we could also be subject to violating the Open Meetings Act if we allow that kind of comment.
Yeah, I'd like to see the list.
Thank you, sir. All right, Lauren, please proceed.
Yes, sir. So topic C is reviewing the Texas Water Development Board comments. So as I mentioned, we received 47 comments from the Texas Water Development Board. I should note that Michelle has indicated that this review, this cycle of regional water plans, it was the most in-depth review of regional water plans of any planning cycle historically. So
That's a quote from the director of water supply planning.
Yeah. Water development. So I know 47 seems like a big number, but it is This is very good compared to previous cycles and very good in comparison to other regions. So it's great news. And so this breaks out the various comments that we received for the level 1 comments. So level 1 was the 27 comments, level 2 was 20. And so the level 1 comments are the ones we're required to respond to. And this is a breakdown of where the comments generally were. So you can see in task 5 or chapter number 5, that's where the majority of the questions or the comments arose from. And most of them were with regards to DB27 and needing to categorize information in a different way or clarify information, clarify water loss, things like that. And again, so this is all the Texas Water Development Board comments are included in their entirety in handout A. And in handout A and attachment A. And then the proposed responses are in handout B. So given that there are 47 comments, we went through and identified the ones that were made that are of particular significance to the Regional Water Planning Group. And so if you would like for us to discuss or provide any context for any of the other comments, we're only going to go through 4 of the Texas Water Development Board's comments. So please let me know if you'd like to discuss more. So the Texas Water Development Board provided a comment about advanced metering infrastructure being included in the water use reduction strategies. So these are all under the section 5.2.1, which is advanced or municipal water conservation or advanced municipal water conservation strategy. And the comment was that municipal water use reduction and water loss mitigation strategies are recommended separately. However, the plan states that advanced metering infrastructure, or AMI, is included in water use reduction strategies. For regional water planning purposes, AMI is to be included under water loss mitigation strategies. So please revise the municipal conservation description, the yields, the cost information, and reconcile updates. And so that took, it wasn't a revision in the yields per se, it was more a revision in the way that we structure the strategy and just sort of moving over the AMI related conservation savings and moving it into water use reduction strategies, or moving it over into water loss mitigation strategies, if that makes sense. So we've been working with the Texas Water Development Board to address this in the plan and in DB27, and they concur with the planned approach in path forward. And the proposed response is that the water management strategy, municipal conservation, water loss mitigation has been updated to include both AMI and leak detection and repair. The WMS municipal conservation water use reduction has been updated to include non-capital cost conservation improvements. The descriptions, yields, cost information, and DB27 information has been updated to reflect these changes in section 5.2.1. Are there any questions on this one? Okay. So then this is slightly out of order because the previous comment was comment number 11. This one's comment number 4, and the reason why it's out of order is because comment number 4 is very much related to comment 11. So the question from the board, or the comment from the board, was unit costs reported in DB27 appear high for the following strategies, and it was municipal water conservation, water use reduction for Kendall County, and municipal water conservation, water loss mitigation for Sunco, WSC. So please confirm that the calculated unit costs are correct in DB27 or correct them as appropriate, and that costs were considered in strategy recommendations in the final adopted plan. So the municipal water conservation, water use reduction, and water loss mitigation strategies were revised as a result of Texas Water Development Board Level 1 comment number 11. And the unit costs in DB27 have been updated accordingly. The calculated unit costs reflect full implementation of capital improvements associated with each strategy. The revised calculated unit costs for the water user groups identified in the board's comment have been revised as follows, and it shows the updated unit costs for those two strategies for those two entities. And so the next paragraph addresses the end of that comment of whether or not costs were considered. So the planning group strongly supports water conservation and considered costs when recommending strategies for the 2026 regional water plan. The municipal water conservation water management strategy is a recommended strategy for every municipal WUG in the planning area with the 2030 GPCD greater than 80. It's important to note that unit costs are calculated by dividing total strategy cost by the potential yield. Therefore, strategies with relatively low water yield and high capital costs will result in higher unit costs. This relationship was considered during the evaluation and recommendation of water management strategies. Are there any comments or feedback on this one?
Did you get any insight into the comment? Because that's, just
insight
very
into,
vague to me.
I think it was mainly that the unit cost of $43,000 per acre foot is abnormally high. And it was sort of like, is this actually feasible? Would a water user group actually implement a strategy if it costs $43,000, if it's just to save 1 acre foot, that sort of thing? And so with our revision of the way that the water conservation sort of sub-strategies were reorganized, the unit costs for those strategies ended up being reduced significantly to more reasonable water management strategy unit costs. But the Sunco WSC unit cost is still quite high, but it's mainly because the yield to the conservation savings is so low, but the costs are high. So that translates to higher unit costs. And generally, when we talked about this back in August, the direction provided to us from the planning group was to apply this approach for all water user groups that have GPCDs greater than 80 GPCD in 2030. So this is applying that same approach.
So you believe it's realistic despite your modification? It reflects reality?
It's much more realistic and in line with what we're seeing from other WUGs, both in Region L and across the state.
Because it kind of looks like you just responded to comment and kind of, well, yeah, you're right. And I mean, I'd have to get into the weeds of what all you did, but it does reflect reality is my question.
Generally, leak detection and repair, based on the assumptions that we made for pipeline replacement amounts, is very expensive on a per acre foot basis.
It really is a reflection of your return on investment. Ms. Bo.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So the next comment is comment number 5. They commented about the quantitative measure of a water management strategy's reliability. So it says, the plan does not appear to include a quantitative measure for assessing reliability of water supplies for water management strategy evaluations. The matrix provided in table 5.2-2 provide a qualitative rating of low to high. Additional reliability considerations presented in table 5.2-3 are only appear to be based on a quantified measure for the ASR strategies. Please provide a quantitative basis for reliability used in the evaluations of all strategies in the final adopted plan, ensuring that any recommended strategies provide a firm water supply throughout drought record conditions. So a lot of this was the distinction between a quantitative measure of reliability versus a qualitative measure of reliability. And so we included in the plan a qualitative measure of low to high and assigned a quantitative value to base a rating to assign to each of these strategies. And we're proposing for it to stay in there with the added statement that if we were to quantify the reliability of these strategies, because we have already quantified that all of these strategies are firm, meaning they would be available to the water user groups during a repeat of the drought of record, Quantifiably, they are 100% reliable. Every strategy is 100% reliable. So the response is, reliability is an assessment of the availability of the specified water quantity to the user over time. Quantifiably, the water volumes presented in this plan for recommended strategies are firm supplies that are 100% reliable during drought of record conditions per TWDB planning guidelines. Considering other factors that can affect long-term availability, such as potential future modeling or rule changes that are beyond the scope of this planning effort, the planning group developed additional qualified reliability reporting in the form of a reliability evaluation matrix, which is still that table 5.2-2, that was used in conjunction with other implementation considerations to also qualify the reliability of strategies shown in table 5.2-3. Additionally, the qualitative reliability assessments for ASR projects in table 5.2-3 have been revised as follows. Reliability is considered high. Successful ASR projects typically require extensive site-specific analyses, feasibility studies, and cycle testing prior to full implementation. So we have already provided this proposed response to the Texas Water Development Board, and they have responded that this is acceptable. Are there any comments on this one? So the fourth of 4 is unallocated recommended strategy volumes. So the comment from the board was that the plan doesn't appear to include explanations for the following recommended strategy volumes that remain 100% unallocated to any WUGs. Please provide a specific explanation for why each of these strategies remaining 100% unallocated to WUGs in the final adopted regional water plan. So the proposed response to this comment is to include this additional paragraph into each of these strategies shown on the left, which is the Canyon Regional Water Authority, expanded Brackish-Carrizo Wilcox project, the CRWA Siesta project, facilities expansion, Hayes Caldwell Water Treatment Plant expansion, and the GBRA Lower Basin new appropriation. So basically, if there's a strategy that is 50,000 acre feet and an entity is only has allocations of 25,000 acre feet to various customers, that means it's not 100% allocated, it's 50% allocated. So the Texas Water Development Board requires justification or an explanation as to why. And so we referred to the guiding principles, the planning group Regional's guiding principles, to develop this language that's shown here in this paragraph with regards to management supply. So the proposed response is to add this language as follows. All or a portion of yield from the strategy remains unallocated to a specific water user group because the project sponsor is a wholesale water provider and has chosen to instead have a surplus management supply. Surplus management supply is when the cumulative supply of the recommended strategies is in excess of the amount needed to meet regional needs to allow for such things as uncertainty associated with long-term planning, problems with project implementation, changing weather conditions, flexibility of sponsors in choosing projects to implement, and changes in project viability. Rather than assigning volumes from a specific project to individual WUGs in the plan, the wholesale water provider contracts with customers from their general water supply portfolio or surplus. This approach allows for flexibility in meeting future demands and accommodating evolving customer needs. As such, the strategy volumes are included in the plan to reflect the wholesale water provider's capacity to meet regional needs, even though specific allocations to WUGs are not identified at this time. That's a long paragraph. Are there any comments or feedback on this proposed response to comment? Okay, hearing none, I'll move on. So that is the conclusion of the Texas Water Development Board comments and proposed responses. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question about other comments. Is now the time to ask them, or is that?
When you say other comments about the Texas Water Development Board responses?
Responses.
Oh, yes, right now. Go for it.
And the second comment was around whether, the local surface water supplies for livestock could be considered firm. And I was surprised that y'all's response was that it is indeed a firm supply. I guess I'm curious about that, given what we see with local surface water supplies during drought.
Yeah, let me go to
So that's my only comment. Everything else is great one.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So comment number 2 is about chapter 3, and it says the plan discusses local surface water supplies used for livestock, but does not specify whether the local water supplies are firm. Please acknowledge whether the local supplies are firm or not in the final adopted regional water plan. And so our response is that in that section regarding the firm yield of local surface water supplies, that section has been revised as follows. Local surface water supplies used for livestock are considered firm based on historical reliability and the assumption that ranchers will manage livestock populations in accordance with the availability of these dependable sources. So all of the quantification that we did for chapter 3 to determine the availability and supplies was based on the assumption that all of this would be, we're required to only put in firm supplies and availability into the plan to begin with. And so when we looked at this comment, we looked at it from the standpoint of this is really a clarification and a reiteration, because we do say in a section above there, this is sort of like a subsection underneath a section about availability and how availability was estimated. And in that we say that these represent firm estimates, or all of the estimates here are firm, but the Texas Water Development Board still wanted us to address that directly. And so that's why we go ahead and kind of parrot the same language from previous, like a parent section to this, and put it into this particular subsection about local surface water supplies. Local surface supplies. Yeah, you're welcome. Are there any other comments or feedback on the proposed responses to the TWDB's comments? Okay. So that takes us to topic D. And so this is another meaty section. So we received one comment from a state agency, and it was the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. And their comment in its entirety can be found in handout A and attachment B. So Region L received this comment from Marty Kelly, who's the Water Resources Program Coordinator, and they commended Region L for our strong emphasis on water conservation, reuse, and drought contingency planning, and for designating 5 stream segments as ecologically unique. They also raised concerns about increased groundwater development and new surface water appropriations and their potential adverse impacts on small springs, groundwater surface water interactions, and in-stream flows and freshwater inflows. And they included recommendations to project sponsors and then also recommendations to the planning group. So the recommendations to project sponsors are to coordinate with the Texas Water Development Board to develop plans to avoid impacts to aquatic resources or to relocate aquatic resources outside of a project area in order to protect freshwater mussel populations. And then for reducing or preventing the transmission of invasive species, they recommend to project sponsors that they avoid transporting water from affected water bodies or enact mitigative measures to prevent transfer of invasive species. And then they included recommendations to the planning group, which we'll break down and show on the following slides. So the first recommendation was to update tables in Chapter 5 and Appendix 5D with the lists of federal and state listed species and species of greatest conservation need. The Texas Parks and Wildlife Department updated these lists in January of this year. It was January 15th of this year. So when we were evaluating these water management strategies, we evaluated them in June through December of 2024. So all of those evaluations were conducted based on the most recent data available. And so they're asking us to update these evaluations based on information that was provided after the date that they were evaluated. And our response is consistent with a similar comment and response from last cycle, which is these evaluations, as presented in Chapter 5 and Chapter 6, were conducted between June and November 2024 using best available data at that time. As with previous planning cycles, we have maintained consistency by basing our assessments on the data current during the evaluation period. Because TPWD's updated species data was released after completion of these evaluations, the evaluations and subsequent summaries in Appendix 5D and Chapter 6 have not been revised to reflect the lists updated by Texas Parks and Wildlife Department in January 2025. The planning group remains committed to incorporating the most current TPWD lists available for strategy evaluations in the next cycle, which is anticipated to start in late 2028 through 2029. It's also important to note that individual project sponsors will conduct more detailed environmental reviews during the feasibility, design, permitting, funding, and implementation phases of each project. Their reviews will incorporate the most current data and regulatory guidance available at that time. Are there any comments on that one? Okay. So the next comment was that for any strategies that involve the transfer of surface water, address the threat of the spread of invasive exotic species and their potential negative environmental impacts. So the proposed response is that the plan does not include any strategies that involve the transfer of surface water to another water body. As such, strategy evaluations have not been revised to specifically address the threat of invasive species in that context. However, Section 6.1.4.1 of Chapter 6 includes extensive narrative on invasive species, recognizing their potential ecological and economic impacts and the importance of monitoring and mitigation. Are there any comments on that one? Okay. The next comment is include additional language regarding invasive species such as identification of infested water bodies and inclusion of mitigation measures to prevent the spread of invasive species through water transfers. And the proposed response is that the plan has not been revised to include this additional language, as there's already an extensive narrative that includes the following language, and it goes through and identifies the infested water bodies and inclusion of mitigation measures to prevent the spread of invasive species. And it also provides a website with up-to-date information showing zebra mussel identifications and maps of infested water bodies. Are there any comments on that? Hearing none. Okay, so the next category of comments we received were from water user groups and wholesale water providers. So comment summaries and proposed responses are included on subsequent slides. So we received two comments or comments from two entities. One was Aqua Water Supply Corporation, and the second was Canyon Regional Water Authority. And CRWA's comments, well, both of these comments are included in handout A. So Aqua WSC's are in attachment C, and Canyon Regional's comments are included in attachment D. And Canyon Regional's comments are going to be presented in agenda item number 8. So for this, so the next slide is only going to be addressing Aqua WSC's comments. Again, this is in attachment C of handout A. So their comments were that Polonia WSC has merged with Aqua WSC. And our proposed response to that is that the WUG list for the 2026 South Central Texas Regional Water Plan was finalized at the May 5th, 2022 meeting and submitted to the board on July 28th, 2022. This information and other WUG name revisions will be updated in the 2031 cycle. The planning group acknowledges the comment and recommends no changes to the 2026 Regional Water Plan. It's basically that we don't have the ability to make those changes at this time to reflect this merging of two WUGs. Item number 2, update potential emergency interconnections table to show interconnect with Aqua Texas, not Aqua WSC. So the proposed response is that in response to your comment, table 7B-2 and appendix 7B has been updated to indicate that the potential emergency interconnection should be with Hays County Other, which is Aqua Texas. Then comment number 3 was to update the potentially feasible water management strategy table included in appendix 5B to include large-scale marine seawater or brackish groundwater development. So the planning group identified potentially feasible strategies in late 2023 and early 2024, forming the basis for the Task 5B scope of work and associated funding. This is the scope of work that the Texas Water Development Board approved for us to pursue. Adding a new water management strategy, such as large-scale marine seawater or brackish groundwater development, would require planning group approval and subsequent evaluation of the strategy for inclusion in the plan, which is not feasible at this stage of the planning process. However, in response to your comment, a note has been added to the potentially feasible water management strategy table, specifically for Aqua WSC in Appendix 5B, stating that Region K evaluated and recommended one or more brackish groundwater development strategies that benefits Aqua WSC. Are there any comments on this one?
Lauren, I have a comment.
Yes, sir.
Did you mention that the executive committee reviewed a lot of these comments and we kind of, provided input? 2 weeks, was it 2 weeks ago?
It was last week. It was last Wednesday.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. Yeah. So I just wanted, the groups, I know we're going over these comments pretty quick, but, we've looked at it.
Well, I think the executive committee reviewed the comments and proposed responses to the comments from CRWA, but not this one. So, but this is consistent with.
I think we did, because with Aqua, I think it's part of Colombia. This is what happened. So yes, we did look at this.
Thank you.
Small, but yes.
Okay.
It wasn't this one. It was.
So the next category of public comments, as I mentioned earlier, we're required to summarize comments, and we can identify comments and group them into categories and then summarize them. And so we have reviewed all of the comments that we received from the public and grouped them into 2 different comments. One is sort of general comments related to the plan, and then the second one is this one, which is public comments related to Gonzales County. So Region L received 11 comments from 10 members of the public opposing proposed groundwater projects within the Carrizo-Wilcox Aquifer in Gonzales County. And this table shows the commenters' names and the dates that they were received. All of these comments are included in handout A. So this is the summary of the public stakeholders' comments to the planning group related to Gonzales County. So the comments expressed concerns regarding over-permitting of groundwater, potential water quality degradation from aquifer storage and recovery projects, and the lack of direct representation from Gonzales County on the Region L Regional Water Planning Group. I just remembered, Mr. Ramos, we covered this in the staff work group meeting in more detail. And then you all had provided comments to us and we made updates to these based on those comments. I know, that was 2 weeks ago. And then last week was executive committee. Okay. So the proposed planning group response is, thank you for sharing your concerns. The planning group appreciates stakeholder engagement and encourages continued involvement in regional water planning efforts. The planning group acknowledges the comments and recommends no changes to the regional water plan at this time. The following provides additional information and resources in response to your comments. Groundwater management and permitting authority reside with local groundwater conservation districts. In Gonzales County, the Gonzales County Underground Water Conservation District regulates groundwater through permitting processes. All permitting comments may be directed to them. The second proposed response for the ASR is that ASR projects are subject to review and regulatory oversight by local and state agencies to ensure that stored water does not compromise the integrity of or adversely affect water quality in an aquifer. And then with regards to the third comment about lack of direct representation from Gonzales County. So Gonzales County is represented in the planning group through at-large members who serve the entire region, as well as through interest categories like the public, environment, counties, and other. Specifically, Gonzales County has direct representation via its groundwater management area, GMA 13, which ensures local groundwater interests are included in the planning process. Do you all want to pause here and have a discussion about this and the proposed responses?
Questions, comments?
I just have to, I'm gonna have to step out, but I will join the rest of the meeting online. So I apologize if we have to step out now. Be online.
Yes, ma'am.
Just want to comment that in other regions, it has come up that sometimes rural communities feel underrepresented with those as our memberships, and this is common in like 4 or 5 different regional water planning groups, and so maybe that's something to look towards for the next cycle, given that we're at the end. But I think representation is a sort of a rural representation is a kind of very long.
Yeah, and actually in the next category of public comments, the general comments, there was another commenter who noted the lack of direct representation for Comal County, I believe. And we provided, they've requested additional information about why individual county commissioners or county judges aren't included for every county on the planning group. And then they also just generally requested, I think, identification of interest group representation for each of the members in the plan. And so we'll get to it in the next few slides, but we do, our proposed response is to actually to revise the plan to include that information in chapter 10. We have at the very beginning of the plan, I don't know, probably page 5 or 10, somewhere between there, we have a page that lists every single regional water planning group member, past and present, who have been engaged and involved with this 6th cycle of regional water plan development. And we list everybody's names, but we don't include or identify who they represented, like their interest category. And so we're going to take that information or we're going to add that information into chapter 10. That's what our proposed response is, but we can get to that in a moment.
Yeah, this is Ted Boriak.
Hey, Ted, I'm going to ask you not to jump in right now because we're going to continue our discussion as a board.
Mr. Boyak, just so you're aware and that all other public attendees are aware, we have in our bylaws protocols for public communication at regional water planning group meetings. And there's decorum within that, and that's why we have the public comment period in the beginning and at the end. So we're sorry to have to cut you off, but those are in our bylaws.
Any other members have a comment or question at this time? Okay, Lauren, move forward.
Okay. So the other public comments that we received 3 written comments from 2 members of the public, and then comments, summaries, and proposed responses are included in subsequent slides. 2 of these comments were provided by, I apologize if I mispronounce your name, Francis Como. And then, I'm not even gonna try and pronounce the third person's, Milan. And yes, so then, from Francis, this comment here is not a summary, it's a comment in its entirety, and it states, I would like the executive summary of the 2026 IPP to include columns to list affected water districts, to list a project start date, or if already started, the percent complete, the target date for water availability or near completion date, and the project's acre foot per year. So some of this information we don't actually have in terms of percent complete of projects or a project start date. What we do have, though, is the target date for water availability. And by target date, I mean target decade. So all of these projects must be online and providing water by December 31st of the year in which the decade is shown as the commencement date. So if a project is online by December 31, 2030, then that means it can fall in the 2030 decade. If it's online any day after that, then it needs to be pushed back to the 2040 decade. So some of that information is already included, but we're sort of limited in terms of space constraints because the board has requirements that we can't exceed 30 pages for the executive summary. So including a list of all 240 water user groups. And I'm interpreting affected water districts means water user groups. So if we were to include all 240 of those, that would take up several pages just for that. So the proposed response is that the executive summary meets Texas Water Development Board requirements for content and the 30-page limit as outlined in Exhibit C, given space constraints and that the information is already included in the regional water plan. The planning group acknowledges the comment and recommends no changes at this time. Additionally, the Texas Water Development Board's interactive state water plan provides a useful resource for reviewing, compiling, and comparing water user groups, strategies, and associated projects. The interactive state water plan is available at, and then that's the website for the 2027 regional water plan, interactive state water plan website, which if you haven't been to this website, it's pretty nifty. It's interactive, nice little Power BI dashboard, and they include all information that was submitted across the state for the initially prepared plans. Are there any comments on this one? Okay. So the second comment received, this is a summary of his comments. He had several comments and we've summarized them here. And his first comment is related to revisions to the executive summary, including adding voting member affiliations and additional data summaries. And for that one, the proposed response is that composition of the planning group follows all applicable statutes, Texas Water Development Board rules, bylaws, and the group's guiding principles. While each county commissioner's court is not individually represented on the planning group, counties as a whole are represented through designated interest categories, and all members are responsible for considering the needs of the entire region. In response to your comment, voting member affiliations have been added to Chapter 10 for reference. Are there any comments or feedback on that proposed response? Okay. The second comment was requesting clarification as to existing supply data differences between Chapter 3 and Appendix 3A for Canyon Lake Water Service, otherwise known as Texas Water Company. So he included several tables in which he summed data from DB27 reports in Chapter 3 and summary tables that we included in Chapter 3. And he noted that there were differences and asked for an explanation as to why there are differences. So the proposed response is that the differences noted for Canyon Lake Water Service between Chapter 3 and DB27 reports are due to the water user group service area spanning both the Guadalupe and San Antonio basins in Comal County. So the table in your letter only includes the existing supplies in the Guadalupe basin, which accounts for the discrepancy. It was on a different page of the appendix, so. Any responses or feedback to that? Okay. So then, continuation of his comments, he requested clarification of volumes of water allocated to customers for the GBRA Water Secure Water Management Strategy. So one of the things we were already planning to update in the plan was to include a table for every strategy for a wholesale water provider in which they're allocating or selling water to various customers, to include a table that shows each customer and the volume by decade that would go to each one. And so we provide a clarification of the volume that would be sold to Canyon Lake Water Service, and then provided a description of where, I think he also asked for how is this actually allocated to customers, who decides this, and I think he asked for I think, was this the one where he asked for a change to the that we would require that the planning, he asked for the planning group to require a copy of an executed contract or agreement between a customer and a seller and a purchaser before we put it into the plan, is what he was asking for. So the proposed response is Canyon Lake Water Service is shown in the plan as purchasing 12,000 acre feet per year from the GBRA Water Secured Water Management Strategy. Yield allocation volumes are provided to the planning group by project sponsors and customers and are typically based on agreements between the seller and purchaser, reflecting factors such as demand, infrastructure capacity, and other relevant considerations. And then he also asked for revisions to table 5.1-2 regarding strategies for water user groups. There's a very long table that includes a list of every single WUG and municipal WUG and each strategy that is included in the plan for them. And so he was asking for volumes as well. And so customer yield allocations have already been included in the final adopted plan. However, table 5.1-2 has not been modified as it is meant to refer the reader to individual strategies for more information. And then comment number 5 is requesting revisions to table 9-1 regarding hydrologic assumptions. So that table compares the hydrologic assumptions between the 2021 plan and the 2026 plan, and they're included in their entirety. And so he was asking for some indication as to what actually changed so that he can more easily review the table and identify where these changes are. And so in response, the proposed response is, in response to your comment, table 9-1 has been updated with bold text to visually highlight changes in hydrologic assumptions between the 2021 and the 2026 plans. So we're proposing to make that change. Are there any comments on this one? Yes, ma'am.
I just had a question to clarify. So this Francis asked for contracts or agreements. Is that what you said?
It's in his letter in full is in the handout.
Sorry?
His letter in full is in the handout under attachment F.
Right. But he asked for some sort of agreements, but we're not providing that because that hadn't even been.
That goes beyond the scope.
And that might be available to him if maybe open records request to GBRA. I don't know about his water company, that's a private company, so yeah, a different way, but it would not come from us.
Right. Would you want me to revise this comment that says this information can be requested from individual purchasers or sellers?
I think Francis can figure that out.
Okay. Okay. I think the next one is from Milan. The comment is a request to revise the definitive statement of Bernie will purchase water from GBRA's Water Secure Project to state Bernie may purchase water from GBRA's Water Secure Project. He also raised similar concerns about definitive language used for other water purchases and recommended verifying written, recommended verifying written commitments from these entities and revising the language accordingly until formal participation has been confirmed. So we received a comment from Bernie that it was on the very first slide of this section, but I didn't verbally state it. I apologize for not getting to that bullet point verbally. That Bernie requested removal of a water purchase in the plan showing that they would purchase water from Water Secure. And so that is resulting in changes to chapters 5 and 6. That is not an issue for the plan because Bernie already has unmet needs. There's already an extensive justification as to why there are unmet needs, and that we reviewed and verified and explored other potentially feasible strategies and found a water purchase to meet shortages and so forth. So changing this allocation is not a significant effort because they already have unmet needs to begin with, and this just reduces their unmet needs by an additional volume of water. So it's easy, yeah, it is reasonable to make this change at this point in time. So yield, the proposed response is Bernie separately requested removal of the water purchase from the Water Secure Project, resulting in changes to chapters 5 and 6. Yield allocation volumes are provided to the planning group by project sponsors and customers and are typically based on agreements between the seller and the purchaser, reflecting factors such as demand, infrastructure capacity, and other relevant considerations. The planning group verifies the sale with the applicable customers and sellers that they wish for the purchase and sale to be shown in the plan. Therefore, the planning group acknowledges the comment and recommends no changes at this time. Does anybody have any feedback on that? Okay. So that completes the review of the majority of the comments, with exception of the comments from CRWA, which is in a separate agenda item. So, sorry, did somebody say something? Okay. So consideration and appropriate action to approve the proposed planning group responses to comments that were submitted by the Texas Water Development Board, Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, Aqua WSC, and the public. And then another potential action item of approving incorporation of proposed responses into the final 2026 Region L Regional Water Plan.
Point of order, do you need these to be two separate actions, or could someone make a motion, a motion to approve both these at the same time?
I believe you could do both.
Use them at the same time, just a motion to approve, insert top and bottom.
So any discussion on the, at this point on the comments we've seen, or any last discussion anybody want?
I would move to approve the proposed responses and incorporate them into the final 2026 Regional Water Plan, if that's sufficient.
Second. All right, I have a motion and a second for both items. Any further discussion on the motion? Sensing none, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. All right, motion passes. Okay. Lauren, you got some water up there, you okay?
This isn't nearly as bad as November, the November
I
meeting.
mean, does the planning group want to take a little quick 5-minute break before we jump in the next item? Or we want to plow ahead? Okay, we're gonna plow ahead.
Yes, sir. So the next steps are we're going to revise the plan according to your action taken today, and we'll update DB 27 by September 22nd, of course, and update those chapters. And then at the October meeting, we'll review any updates that we haven't already discussed today, review those plan updates, and review any response updates, which there shouldn't be any because you've already approved all of the proposed responses, except for those for CRWA. And then we will adopt the final plan at that October meeting. And then the next step after that is to submit the final adopted plan and supporting documents to the board by October 20th. So are there any questions before we move to the next agenda item? Okay, so would you like me to proceed, Chair? Okay, thanks. Agenda item 8, discussion and appropriate action regarding proposed update to CRWA Wells Ranch Phase 3 project as presented in the IPP. So just as a quick refresher about the CRWA Wells Ranch Phase 3 project, this is the slide that we presented to you all at the November 7th, 2024 meeting, where we were presenting results of the evaluations of water management strategies. And this project includes a groundwater well field in Gonzales County, and the envisioned yield is 14,500 acre feet per year. As we've discussed today and in previous meetings, Gonzales County is one of the MAG constrained counties in which we have needed to proportionally reduce projects to fit within the MAG. The red text shown here is was to indicate differences between the 2021 plan and the strategy evaluations as of that November 7th meeting. So we submitted the IPP with that information showing the plan to be in Gonzales County. And so we submitted that IPP in March of this year. And in May, CRWA requested revisions to this project, the Wells Ranch Phase 3 strategy. And during discussions of how to address those requests for the changes, which at that time the requested revision was to add additional footprint. So instead of the project only being in Gonzales County and having a well field only in Gonzales County, they requested an additional well field in Guadalupe County as well. And so during those efforts to determine a path forward to address those comments, we identified a mistake, an inconsistency between DB 27 and the plan. So what we ended up showing in DB 27 showed that the well field would be located only in Guadalupe County, but the plan report showed it to be in Gonzales County. And so in July, CRWA submitted a comment letter, and this was well before the comment period ended. So they submitted a comment to the planning group requesting 4 major requests. And so the summary of their requests were to, number 1, correct that error, that inconsistency in the MAG constrained deals for this water management strategy. Number 2, to update cost estimates using sponsor supplied data for the Wells Ranch Phase 3 project. They provided us recent opinions of probable costs for these projects in May. And then the third request was to revise customer allocations for the Wells Ranch Phase 3 strategy, to add additional customers and remove several. And then the fourth request was to revise the major water providers definition and identify CRWA as a major water provider. And so as a result of these discussions and their request to revise this project and their comment letter, we met multiple times with CRWA, Texas Water Development Board, San Antonio River Authority, Chair Campbell, the executive committee. There have been numerous discussions to determine the best path forward, given that the requests were made in May, when the deadline to have provided that information was September of 2024. And so from July to August, we had those discussions on options and path forward. And in August, the executive committee met and provided recommendations based on those options. And in one of those meetings, it was prior to August 30th, CRWA provided direction that they would approve of, they were in agreement to pursue the quote Gonzales only option. And so there were 2 options on the table of this hybrid option that would give them the footprint they desired in Guadalupe and Gonzales counties. And then another option was to correct the error and have it only be in Gonzales County. So the executive committee met, considered that and other factors, and they provided recommendations, which I believe Chair Campbell can speak to on the next slide.
Yeah, I'll take the next slide. So as you heard earlier, we met last week. Before I say more, I just want to commend Lauren and Michelle and Kai and Stephen and probably more people that are behind the scenes on just getting all this information together and getting it to us so that we can look through it, and also just working with CRWA to try to get to a resolution that seemed fair and good for in the right direction for the plan. We had obviously the 2 options that are on the slide ahead in front of you guys, a hybrid option, which was their original ask. And then through the process that we went through and then working with CRWA, subsequently they agreed, or they've indicated now that their desire is to go to the Gonzales only option. We reviewed it last week and talked with Lauren and her team, and we decided to recommend going with the Gonzales only option for a couple reasons. One reason is because when we looked at the guiding principles of the region of the planning group, that our intent is to get the desire of the well into the plan. And I felt that if going with the hybrid option wouldn't actually get the current desire of the user group into the plan. So the Gonzales only option, that's one option or one consideration. The other one, it turned out the benefit is the Gonzales only option, the easiest option and least time consuming and or costly option to pursue. So from the standpoint of the planning group's budget and our consultant's budget, it's the best option to go. So that's why we have made that recommendation to approve going with the Gonzalez only option. And then any other executive members want to add to that?
I'd like to make a comment with regards to the guiding principles. There, the guiding principle says the WUG is a sponsor of water management strategy. I'm paraphrasing to the extent that the planning group can help with the project for moving forward. But taking that in consideration, one of the things that Lauren touched on are these deadlines. We all have deadlines that we need to meet these deadlines. So as a result of this, what I'm proposing next go around, that within our guiding principles, we add that we conform to the deadlines. Because at some point, what I'm trying to do is avoid an intra-regional conflict that may result if we're going down a path and maybe another WUG was interested in this water as well. These intra-regional conflicts arise. So we need to start looking at our guiding principles, probably adopting something similar that says we have to conform to the deadlines. The deadlines are deadlines. If we fail to meet the deadlines, then opportunity at the next plan to amend or something like that. But I do feel as we go and we start looking at this limited supply of water as well, there may be intra-regional conflicts. And what I'm trying to do is try to avoid that. And with regards to this, we do understand Canyon Regional, along with Sarah, reached out to those potentially impacted WUGs. And there wasn't really a concern about that at this time. So again, the committee felt that this was the least invasive option. It made sense. More importantly, if it was done within a timely fashion, that Canyon Regional wanted this, that it would have been cutbacks for everybody within Gonzalez. We understand the processes. Others are out here, others want water. If Canyon Regional was beginning, everybody would have the same cutbacks. Fortunately enough, all the utilities that are involved in this have no angst about this. It makes sense. And going to our guiding principles, it only made sense that we conform and use our guiding principles, go through that process. Allow this to happen. Again, it's just a recommendation from the executive committee. It's certainly discussion from the planning group as to what the desire is for the planning group for this particular.
And I'll add, I think that we did discuss it, and I think along with Mr. Ramos' comment, the executive committee's recommendation is really on what you're going to see as their item number 1 on the next slide. They did have 3 other comments, but we as an executive committee did discuss those, and so we did discuss how to treat those. And to Mr. Ramos' comment, that the other ones we felt were asking for things that should have been supplied previously based on deadlines. And so you'll notice in the comments we just approved, there were a couple of responses of, this will be addressed in the next plan, because it's not submitted in time with the planning cycle. That's the way we advised the consultant to address the other comments from CRWA. So if you want to present the comments as you've got them on the slide, Lauren, that's our recommendation.
Yes, sir. So based on the executive committee's recommendations and the regional water planning process and processes, the following slides include proposed planning group responses to CRWA's comments. And again, I will emphasize that these are proposed, and if you have any feedback, we can discuss it here. So regarding CRWA's first comment of the need to correct the MAG constrained yields in the Wells Ranch Phase 3 project, in response to your comment, the 2026 Regional Water Plan has been revised to update the MAG constrained yields for the Wells Ranch Phase 3 water management strategy and to ensure consistency between the Regional Water Plan and DB 27. Any comments on that one? Okay. So then the second and third comments are included on this slide. And so they requested an update to the cost estimates using sponsor supplied data for the Wells Ranch Phase 3 project. So for every water management strategy, we perform costing analyses using a costing model. It's called the Uniform Costing Model through the Texas Water Development Board. And there are standards and requirements that we must follow. And we do frequently use external data provided by sponsors to include in these cost estimates in the plan. However, the deadline for providing that information was September 2nd. So this information was provided to us the deadline was September 2nd of 2024. And this information was provided to us on May 21st of 2025. So the next one about revising customer allocations for the Wells Ranch strategy was to remove 3 customers, which included Converse, Marion, and Martindale, and then adding 5 customers, which included County Line Sud, East Central Sud, Green Valley Sud, Maxwell Sud, and Springs Hill. And this is also information that was required September 2nd to be provided to us. And while we did remove Bernie, from that standpoint, Bernie, we removed the customer allocation. We can update that in the plan at this point because Bernie already has unmet needs and it doesn't cause multiple downstream impacts due to the change in that allocation. However, this request to remove 3 customers, which included Converse, would cause multiple downstream impacts because this would take Converse into the territory of having unmet needs. And so then if we have unmet needs for Converse, we then need to find other water management strategies for them to have, or we would need to provide an extensive justification as to why there is an unmet need and all the different avenues we explored to address that unmet need. And at this point in time, because it came after the deadline, as Chair Campbell mentioned, we were given the direction to refer to the deadlines and say that due to this information being submitted after the deadline and due to time constraints of making this change after at this stage of plan development, that the planning group acknowledges the comment but is not recommending any changes at this time. One thing I also need to note is that in the addition of those 5 customers, County Line Sud was initially included in that request in the comment letter from CRWA on July 17th. And then I have a little asterisk there, but I have an incorrect date. It says on May 21st, 2025. It was actually, they provided this information to us, I believe, on August 31st. No. Thank you. So instead of a 5/21, it should have been an 8/21. So on August 21st, they provided an update that County Line is no longer going to be, is not included in their request anymore to be added as a customer for this project. So the proposed planning group response is the planning group required all project sponsors to submit new project requests and provide project details by established deadlines to allow sufficient time for review and evaluation of strategies. The deadline for submitting external cost estimates and customer allocation changes was September 2nd, 2024. Since the information was submitted after this deadline and due to time constraints at this stage of plan development, the planning group acknowledges the comment and recommends no changes to the plan at this time. Is there any feedback or proposed revisions to this comment? Okay. So then the 4th request of CRWA's was to revise the major water provider's definition and identify CRWA as a major water provider. The proposed response is that major water providers are defined as a water user group or wholesale water provider of particular significance to the region's water supply as determined by the Regional Water Planning Group. The planning group reviewed and considered multiple options for defining major water providers at its August 1st, 2024 meeting and voted to adopt a major water provider definition as any WUG or wholesale water provider with 2080 demands greater than 30,000 acre feet per year. CRWA does not meet the current criteria for major water provider designation because a wholesale water provider has contract demands of 21,000 acre feet per year in 2080. The planning group recognizes the importance of CRWA's role in regional water supply and will revisit the major water provider definition in the next planning cycle. Stakeholder input, including from CRWA, will be considered during that process to ensure the definition reflects evolving regional needs. Are there any proposed comments on that one or discussion? Okay. Then, now it's time for you to consider and potentially take action to approve the recommendation from the executive committee to pursue the Gonzalez only option for the CRWA Wells Ranch Phase 3 project, to approve the proposed planning group responses to the comments submitted by CRWA, and then approve incorporation of the proposed responses to CRWA comments into the final regional water plan.
I'm sorry I'm late with this comment, but could you go back 2 slides?
Yes, sir.
I was just thinking about what Humberto said, and I agree with what he's saying. And therefore, it says, since the information was submitted after this deadline, I would ask that it be period and have nothing to do with time constraints at the stage of the development plan. In other words, they missed the deadline, and that's what you were saying, right? Well, now we're saying, if we had more time, maybe we could have done it, but that's not really our philosophy. If we agree with what Humberto is saying, and I agree with what he's saying. So I would ask that be changed for a period after deadline. Well, comma, and then acknowledges.
Going to strike and due to time constraints at this stage of the plan.
What about the Bernie issue? So Bernie requested removal of that allocation from G-Berry Water Secure to them, and we are approving removal of that because there aren't time constraints associated with that action, and there aren't downstream implications of having new unmet needs and so forth. Does that change your?
No, I think those are good reasons, so it doesn't change what I'm thinking.
Okay.
I don't know, any objection to making that amendment to the verbiage here? Let's move forward. I'll take any discussion here, or
I think the board is saying is that might present an issue where we're not being consistent in application of policy, because it's the combination of deadline, but then with Bernie, it was plus it didn't produce a timing issue. So I would worry that if we strike that piece out, we're opening us up to saying, well, you did it for Bernie and they submitted after the deadline.
the only other difference is the request came from a different level. This is a request from the lug. Bernie is a customer requesting to not be in the list. They're not exactly the same request.
But there's no conflict there.
Would it be helpful to have that clarification, to clarify that here, or just go ahead and strike out that text as Mr. Puente recommended?
Oh, it's just, take a quick poll. If anybody has we'll vote if anybody would like to strike the language as Mr. Puentes suggested. Please say aye.
Aye.
Any objections?
Okay.
We'll go ahead and move forward with that.
Thank you.
Language, with that edit.
And I don't know if you all heard, but Michelle Voss with the Texas Water Development Board recommended just striking out that phrase as well before you all voted. So I don't know if microphones picked it up or not.
Thank you. Okay.
Now
Now we're back to the action slide. As amended, we have the three actions you see in front of us. So accept the motion. So move for discussion. Moved. So moved. I have a motion.
Second.
And a second. Mr. Mangold. All right. So I have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed, then the motion passes.
That completes my slides for these agenda items.
Okay, that moves us to item number 9, discussion of early action regarding the establishment of additional subcommittees. I'm not aware of any, and no one's approached me or Kai, so unless anybody has anything, they can speak now, but we'll move on to item number 10, schedule and potential agenda items for the next meeting. We do have we're coming to the end of the planning cycle. We do have 11 planning group members whose terms are expiring. Expire in 2026, like at the beginning or at the end?
So that's the thing
That
that
is the question.
I wanted to bring up. So this is unusual for me, but in 2026, we do have 11 planning group members that their terms expire in that year. In Region L, at least, we don't have a specific date in which those expire. It just goes by year. And historically, we've gone through the practice of handling those term expirations at the end of the year.
Of this year.
Of the year of the term expiration. So
next year.
so if that could be something y'all agree upon next meeting, I'll have that on the agenda just for y'all to say, hey, let's handle those at the end of 2026 or at the beginning. I think maybe recently we've done that once. We did it somewhat in the middle of the year, but we can do it at the end of the year.
Okay, so we want to have that on our next meeting agenda is what we're saying, and then we'll make a decision on where we want to do that next year.
Yeah, some direction on that.
When does the, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Oh, yes, please.
I have a question. So, and maybe for Michelle, you said that y'all are developing the schedule for the 2031 state water plan. So in terms of the term, when does the first meeting of the next planning cycle start? So, I mean, if right, mine's in 26, I think, right, my term's up. So I don't want to necessarily start a new cycle if we're going to change the potential terms a year into that first year of the 2031 cycle. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
The start of the next planning cycle would essentially begin January, February.
Our first meeting next year.
26.
So October 2nd is our final action for the 2026 regional water plan.
October 20, submittal of the plan. You know, presuming, you know, we approve, you know, everything has been corrected and whatnot. We will make a recommendation to the board to approve the plans. That would probably be in January 2026 board. So all depending on what you wanted to do for your 2026 planning group schedules, could be February or March for Q1 to begin planning activities for the next cycle. So
we can have an agenda item on it next time, but it kind of sounds like we need to probably, I think if you start a new session with a new person when a year's gone by, you want to line that up with when we're going to start talking about the new cycle.
As much as we can.
Right.
It goes to all the data and all the things we've been talking about all day.
Don't lose focus that throughout the process, people do.
Right,
People
right.
do. So, you know, I guess for the next meeting, I guess the list of who is going to potentially maybe leading would be helpful. So that when we start, you know, with us, we can go through the proper channels to ensure that we're being. And that'd be very helpful.
I may ask if anybody, your cycle is ending and you're not going to seek again, you might let us know, you know.
yeah, that would be an appropriate action, is determining who would like to continue serving and or, you know, nominate someone else to replace them that is willing to serve, and then find out how many potential vacancies might need to be filled.
Start thinking about that. We'll have it on our next meeting in October.
I have a list of possible.
Yeah, I can
Nominations.
listen out to you right now. So we have Travis Bruski, Gary Middleton, Robert Puente, Adam Yablonsky, Weldon Riggs, Vanessa Quigg Williams, Charlie Flatten, Darren Simmons, Jonathan Stinson, Debbie Former, and Scooter Mangold. Those are all the terms that expire in 2026.
Okay. So you'll have an appropriate, agenda item for us. And we also talked about it today, but we also talked about potentially having an agenda item to kind of talk about our guiding principles. And so, I'd like to ask that we do have that agenda item going forward unless anybody else has objection, but
You want to move to January meetings, that way if there are
Yeah.
members, they can do it.
Like coincide it with whenever we do the
yes,
nomination.
I think so, yes.
Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
Chairman, this is Diane Wasenick.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
represent the public. And in view of the concerns that we've heard today from the public, I feel that I may have to explain the constraints that we use to distribute the MAG yields. And so can I just have a very brief explanation again of how we distribute those? Is it first in time? If they're not permitted, how do we determine which one was first? Or do we just distribute it evenly? Could you explain that?
I may try or may ask Lauren to.
Yeah, Lauren asked that I could answer the question. It is not by priority of request or anything. It is proportional. So let's say that the MAG of a specific aquifer county basin is 10,000 acre feet, and we have 50,000 acre feet in request. Every project will be reduced proportionally. So, well, let's say it's 100,000 requests. So every project would be reduced to 10% of their requested yield. So if you look in Chapter 5, every MAG constrained project has a requested yield. So their envisioned yield actually, and then it has the MAG constrained yield. And so you'll be able to see both of those, and it is even by proportion.
Okay, but my follow-up question is, there are some who are already permitted by the groundwater districts. And so those permits are honored. It's the ones that are not yet permitted that are redistributed in this way?
No, they are all treated equally.
Even the ones who are already permitted by the groundwater district?
Yes, because permits don't necessarily align with those MAGs.
Okay, I thank you for that info.
And if I can add, so we do our best to identify in each water management strategy whether or not permits have been secured. And also note that according to the plan and also the guiding principles, the plan is not intended to influence any regulatory actions, permitting actions by GCDs. And that this is not an indication of how GCD should manage their groundwater resources.
Thank you, Lauren.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
one more comment.
Yes, please.
Another clarification for the public. The regional water plans are collections of strategies. Just because they are included in the plan does not necessarily mean that every single strategy is going to be pursued and developed by the project sponsors. It's like a menu. These are options to be considered, and the project sponsors will determine which projects to pursue based on, financial efficiency, population demands, needs, environmental conditions, so forth and so on. So, we've heard numerous times that GCDs have sometimes said, well, if it's not in the plan, we're not going to permit it, that sort of thing. I know for a fact that the board and some state representatives are going back to the GCDs and trying to correct some of those assumptions with the rules. I hope that's helpful information for everyone.
Any other board comments, questions? So that moves us to item number 11, public comment. So do we have any public comment, Kai?
Yeah, this is Ted Boring. I'd like to get a public comment in.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm a landowner out of Gonzales County, and I'm very active in the groundwater issues over here. Groundwater is a very big deal in Gonzales. It's a lot of family farms and ranches, and we're under attack. And what we find is, just heard the comment about, hey, this is a menu of projects, possibilities. But what happens is the reality, and take this from a guy who's been through 4 contested case hearings. These projects are put into the plan. Many of them are not sustainable. They're in excess of the MAG. The MAG you can't even trust because those numbers aren't based upon actual aquifer conditions. I think there was this discussion earlier by a gentleman who made some excellent remarks about the GMA meeting with Dr. Hutchison, who presented groundwater modeling there over in Pleasanton. And I was there at that meeting, and it's horrifying. When you hear the term modeled available groundwater and you find out it's got a lot of funny math in it and projects plugged in there, and they show that despite you got pumping far in excess of the recharge rate, that water goes up over the decades to come. It puts the farmer and the landowner in the business of having to be the police force to stop bad projects from happening. And it's really it should be the responsibility of the GMA groups and the region planning groups to make sure you don't put bad projects in the plan. Because right now we have not enough well mitigation money. The well mitigation manager in Gonzales County has had the brakes put on him because there's too many wells and not enough money. There's no well mitigation for public supply wells that serve the small towns in Gonzales County. They've already permitted far in excess of the MAG. And then we see projects like from Canyon Regional coming in after the deadline, and they're getting all of this time and consideration by the region planning group. And then comments by about a dozen landowners in Gonzales County are generally dismissed. And it's not fair. And so the region planning group, I really want to know who is representing Gonzales County in this group that has ever stood up to help protect the farms and the ranches from all of this excess production. Who is it?
I think we talked about it earlier, but this public comment period isn't really supposed to be a discourse back and forth. So
okay.
Take public comment, and then I think, as we said earlier, there's opportunity for you to reach out to Kai or Lauren, or we can get you in connection with the right people, and then we can have those discussions, answer those questions outside of this meeting. So.
Okay, well, I will be submitting comments in writing. There's no way I could cover all the shortfalls of what's happening here in this little bit of time that I get. Another thing that's come to light is
we're at the 3 minutes, so I would appreciate.
We're at the 3 minutes. There we go. Okay. Well, this is the problem with this process. You guys shove through these projects, and then it's up to the landowners to do the defense. And it's not right.
Doriak, I'm going to ask him to mute you right now because we're at the 3 minutes, and I appreciate your concerns, and please submit your comments, and we'll get those answers for you. But I need to move forward with our agenda and let anybody else in the public have an opportunity. So is there anybody else in the public has a public comment at this time? Okay, so sensing no other public comment, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting. And thank you, everybody.